Hey Reddit, what is the scariest unexplained mystery that you know of? Story 1. SBS is this TV channel in Australia, and they had this late night special one night and warned it would never be shown again. It had a whole bunch of weird videos, but the strangest one I still remember vividly. These guys were at a beach and had left their camera running while they fooled around on the beach, waving at the camera, throwing a ball. After a few minutes, some guy comes walking out of the water, not dressed in any scuba equipment, just walks out of the water, talks to the couple. Then they follow him into the water, just walks straight in. The video ends with a message saying that this camera was found deserted on the beach. Now I'm sure it was all set up and done very well. I saw this about 20 years ago and would love to see it again if anyone knows it. Story 2. Okay, so I live in Indianapolis. There's a manufacturing town called Anderson, about 20 to 30 minutes north of the city. This story was originally told to me by a guy that I work with and lives in Anderson. At the Delphi plant, they had a tank they used to store byproducts and chemicals from making bumpers. They found several squid-like creatures in this toxic goo. One apparently had an eye. The specimens were taken and no one ever saw them again. No word was ever sent as to what it really was. There were a few of them. Here's the only link I can find online. They apparently were somewhat transparent and resembled squids, about as big as your hand. These chemicals would not be conducive to any kind of life. It's called the oil pit squid. Story 3. The Mary Celeste mystery is interesting. What was so terrifying that a ship was abandoned that quickly? Famous for having been discovered on the 4th of December 1872 in the Atlantic Ocean unmanned and apparently abandoned, one lifeboat was missing. Despite the fact that the weather was fine and her crew had been experienced and able seamen, the Mary Celeste was in seaworthy condition and still under sail heading toward the Strait of Gibraltar. She had been at sea for a month and had over 6 months' worth of food and water on board. Her cargo was virtually untouched, and the personal belongings of passengers and crew were still in place, including valuables. The crew was never seen or heard from again. Their disappearance is often cited as the greatest maritime mystery of all time. Story 4. Number stations are very interesting. They are probably used to communicate with spies and other operatives overseas, using one-time pad encryption. If this is implemented correctly, the cipher will be impossible to decrypt. However, history has taught us that it has sometimes been used or generated incorrectly, which opens it up for attacks. A Swedish citizen named Stig Bergling spied for the Soviet Union and received his orders via radio shortwave transmissions, which he listened in on with this radio. There are still loads of number stations in use today, such as E10, probably run by the Mossad, schedule. You can listen to a lot of recorded number stations on the Conit project at SoundCloud. People often seem to lump number stations in with other kind of strange and unusual transmissions, such as jammers. Example, Chinese Fire Dragon, which jams the E10 way HF, dead hand systems and surveillance systems for stuff like remote lighthouses on the Russian coast, and other equipment at sea, like research buoys. Another transmission that seems to pop up often is the UVB-76, also known as the buzzer. The constant monotone buzzing leads a lot of people to assume it is part of an old nuclear dead hand system. I think this is false. It has been interrupted several times by people speaking over the transmission and in the background. UVB-76 is probably a form of emergency communication. We can safely rule out any automatic systems, since voice recognition is very error-prone even on modern devices with clear recording and transmission. Having a computer read and interpret human speech over a shaky transmission would be extremely unreliable. Story 5. This happened to my friend's uncle and scares the crap out of me when I think about it. My friend's uncle was single at the time and getting himself ready for a date. He was going through the routine most men go through before they go on a proper date, picking through his closet until he had a nice set of clothes he wanted to wear, and making sure he was presentable. He sets the clothes he's chosen on the bathroom sink while he takes a shower. This is where crap starts to get screwed up. He's scrubbing in the shower, washing his hair and whatnot. Everything seems to be perfectly normal. He's in a relatively good mood, excited about the date, and not too tired from his day of work. When he finishes his shower, he steps out, grabs a towel from the linen closet, and dries himself off in the mirror, inspecting his face for blemishes or nicks from shaving. He decides that he is satisfied with how he is currently presented and reaches his hand down to grab the shirt he picked from his closet, only to find that it is no longer there. No shirt, No pants, no socks, no underwear. Everything he decided to wear has mysteriously vanished. Keep in mind, he lives by himself and heard nothing in the bathroom while he was showering. He didn't really take it as anything and grabbed a new set of clothes from his closet and left for the date. 6 or so months later, he is searching for something. I forget what the object was. Looking all over the house from it. He's starting to look for this object in offbeat places that he never puts anything into. We've all been in that desperate search mode before. Anyway, he's digging through the back of one of his closets, in a place he hasn't been in years, and finds a neatly folded pile of clothing. The same clothing he was supposed to wear on his date 6 months prior, neatly stacked in the back of a closet he hasn't seen in years. Story 6. Well, this isn't historical or particularly earth-shattering by any means, but here goes. About 3 weeks ago, I was working in my kitchen at work. It was about 4 or 5 a.m. I was just cleaning up and ready to clock out. I went out to the front where the registers are and went to punch in my employee code on the register computer. Just as I was about to do that, the computer mouse starts scrolling around the screen, opening files, looking through employee stats. Then all 3 registers opened up in sync. Or I should say they slammed open. So at this point, being that it was 5 a.m., I was pretty sleep-deprived and freaking out. I thought maybe someone was using the computer from a remote location. Then the registers all closed in sync. No one can make the registers close without being in the store. Yeah, so there's a video of me staring at all of this happening and going, ha ha, screw this, and running away like a small child. Story 7. Unexplained mysteries are interesting. It's the unknown ones I worry about. It's very likely that whatever is out there that I would be most terrified of, I don't even know it exists and could happen. Here's a good one. Humans have existed in our current physical and evolutionary state for a length of time that far exceeds recorded history by magnitude. Look at the advancements made merely during our recorded history, and to include archaeological evidence. During this time, humans sprang from using stone tools to being capable of space travel. That only accounts for a pretty small part of human history. What were we doing for the rest of it? Scratching our heads? Were we content with stone tools and hunter-gathering? Doesn't sound vaguely like human nature to me. There was time enough for many great civilizations, even rivaling our technological level, to emerge, grow, and die. You would think that there would be some fossil record or trace of said civilizations. It's hard to discount that humans gathered and formed societies which would have evolved. How does that not happen until recently? It doesn't make sense that humans just stood around for a few 100,000 years, then figured civilization would be neat. But what happened to them? Story 8. The brain and dot, how it really works. I.e., is there a reason our subconscious is subconscious and doesn't talk? Also, prion diseases. They scare me. And schizophrenia. I'm amazed at how it works. There are some pretty sensible theories about how schizophrenia works. For reading, I recommend Phantoms in the Brain by V.S. Ramachandran. Basically, his theory is this. You know how you can't tickle yourself? This is because your brain has a natural fail-safe, which tells your body, this is your own hand, so don't freak out. This fail-safe applies in a lot of different situations. Ramachandran's theory is that schizophrenia is a breakdown of that fail-safe. The idea is that normally you imagine all sorts of crazy things over the course of the day, and it doesn't worry you because that fail-safe kicks in and tells you, don't worry, this is something you're imagining. It's not real brain stimuli. It's something you're making up so it's perfectly safe. But for someone afflicted with schizophrenia, that fail-safe doesn't ever kick in. So your brain imagines that you see something or hear something, like a voice saying words, and you never get that safety message telling you that it's not real. Suddenly you're hearing things and seeing things all the time that aren't real, but your brain is telling you they are, and you flip out. As far as I know, this has never been tested, but Ramachandran also suggests that if his theory is correct, a schizophrenic should laugh if he or she tickles himself. Story 9. Quantum entanglement. How the hell does it work? It's actually pretty simple. When a particle is created, momentum must be conserved, so 2 particles must be created, going in opposite directions. Each of these particles starts out in a superposition of spins. That is, it is spinning up and down at the same time. If you were to observe the spin of one of the particles, then the spin would immediately pick a direction. Since the angular momentum must be conserved, the instant the spin of one of the particles picks a direction, the spin of the partner particle must also pick the opposite direction. This change of the partner particle's spin from a superposition of spins to the opposite spin happens instantly. This cannot be used to send information, and it's not totally weird that a phenomenon that cannot send information goes faster than light. For example, think of a laser beam that you point at a large flat surface some distance away. You sweep the beam from point A on the surface to point B as fast as you can, such that the dot on the surface goes from A to B faster than light. This is allowed because you are in no way sending information from A to B faster than light. Story 10. My friend worked at a Harrah's casino in Maricopa, Arizona. Anyone familiar with the area knows that this particular casino is out in the middle of nowhere on the Native American reservation. Anyway, my friend is a normal, emotionally stable white guy who is atheist. He was working late around 3 a.m. on the casino floor. He is a night owl, so he was wide awake since this is his normal shift. He is not a drug addict or one to make up crap stories. So here he is in this empty casino, walking into the vacant men's bathroom on the opposite side of the casino floor. He walks in, does his business in the urinal, and turns around to go wash his hands, when he notices someone standing at the sink, staring into the mirror. He thinks to himself, "That's strange, I didn't even hear anybody walk in." He gets closer to a sink, about 5 rows down, and begins washing his hand. He glances over again to realize it was not a man that was standing at the sink, but a woman in a red dress. Right when he is about to say something about her using the wrong restroom, this woman turns her head slowly towards him, and he just stares at her kind of in disbelief, thinking this chick must be drunk or blind to not realize she was in the men's bathroom. As her head slowly turned, her eyes were a dark, glowing red. He describes it as the red eye you would get when taking a photo of someone. He freaks out, doesn't know what the heck is happening, and looks down to notice she doesn't have any legs. Instead, she has what he described as the bottom half of a deer for legs, and she was walking on hooves. Anyway, as this thing turns towards him, it starts to move aggressively, and my friend ran out of the bathroom, obviously scared crapless. He had his buddy review the surveillance tape of that area around the bathroom, but all that was seen was him going into the bathroom, then him running out of the bathroom. He may have experienced this. Story 11. I had a very good friend who died suddenly 3 years ago. Prior to that, he had repeatedly told us he would die very young. We knew he had some kind of syndrome and heart problems related to it, but we never took it seriously, since he didn't show any signs of being ill. I guess we were also kind of in denial, so what's the weird bit? He was raised by his grandmother. He had told us the story of how his grandmother, who always lived in the same place, had a long-standing enmity with a neighbor. She, the neighbor, was apparently in love with Grandma's husband. Something about Grandma stealing him away from her or something like that. Anyways, years ago, this neighbor, who my friend said dealt with dark arts and black magic, particularly Brazilian sorcery, one day casts a curse over his grandma during an argument. 7 men you love will die before you do, was what she said. Grandma had 7 children. By the time my friend died, 4 of her sons had already died. My friend's father and 3 of his uncles. Her husband had died too. My friend used to say he would be the 6th, and then there would be a 7th before she dies. Grandma's still well and going around. Haven't heard of their remaining children since. Story 12. Not really scary, but it has to do with a plane that crashed into the Mon River in Homestead, Pennsylvania. All crewmen survived the crash, but the plane was never recovered. So where did it go? The river was the site of a famous airplane crash that has become the subject of numerous urban legends and conspiracy theories. Early in the morning of January 31st, 1956, a B-25 bomber en route from Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada to Olmsted Air Force Base in Pennsylvania crashed into the river near the Glenwood Bridge in Homestead, Pennsylvania. All 6 crewmen survived the crash, but 2 later succumbed to exposure and drowned. Despite the relative shallowness of the water, the aircraft was never recovered. Story 13. The events surround Gloria Ramirez, the toxic woman. A registered nurse named Susan Kane attempted to draw blood from Ramirez's arm and noticed an ammonia-like smell coming from the tube. She passed the syringe to Julie Gorczynski, a medical resident who noticed manila-colored particles floating in the blood. At this point, Kane fainted and was removed from the room. Shortly thereafter, Dr. Gorczynski began to feel nauseated. Complaining that she was lightheaded, she left the trauma room and sat at a nurse's desk. A staff member asked her if she was okay, but before she could respond, she also fainted. Maureen Welch, a respiratory therapist who was assisting in the trauma room, was the third to pass out. The staff was then ordered to evacuate all emergency room patients to the parking lot outside the hospital. Story 14. I only made this account so that I could tell this story because my brother uses Reddit a lot, and I only occasionally go on it. Keep in mind that my family told me this on Christmas Day. This year, I'm 17 years old and had yet to hear of this until then. My older brother was told not to tell me until they told me. It started when I was about 4 years old, that my mom noticed strange crap about me. We were at a family friend's house, and I'd been sitting on the lap of my family friend's mother's lap, who happened to be in her early 70s. While everyone was talking, I began stroking her hand and blurted out, "You're very old." My mom, being Italian, scolded me for the rude remark. I replied with, "It's true. She's gonna die soon." Horrified, my mom put me on timeout. We left the family friend's house late and didn't speak to them for a few weeks. Exactly 1 month from that day, my parents received word that the mother had passed away, exactly 1 month since I had told her that she was gonna die soon. Anyway, my Nona, grandmother, began calling me a devil child, and that's when crap got weird. Until I was about 7, I would have descriptive dreams of crap that would happen. None of this I remember, by the way. I would ask my mom why someone was at our front door. She would check, and no one would be there. Seconds later, someone would appear, or I would say someone was going to call the house with good news, and a few hours later, someone would. Eventually, it stopped, I guess, but it still haunts my mom when she thinks about it. Kind of creepy for me, personally, but I thought I would share it. Story 15. Me and a buddy were watching Atlanta, and a commercial interrupted the program that was on. We weren't watching it, we just turned off the Xbox, and it was on that channel. We just got through playing NBA 2K. Anyway, this commercial showed the German army, an image of the Pope shaking hands with Hitler, the American flag on the same pole as a German flag, and some more disturbing images. When we tell people, they think we are lying. We were mortified. We can't find it anywhere online, and nobody we know's seen it. Also, there was this one time we were sitting online, I was showing the same friend a video. We were drinking beer, and mine was full. I'll be damned if it slid like 9 inches across the table, which was glass, very heavy and level. Story 16. This has been happening recently. First, my laptop started emitting strange sounds from its speakers, which kind of sounded like a typical Hollywood intercepted alien transmission. So I recorded the sounds, and it definitely sounds bizarre. I pulled the CD tray out and everything to see what was making the noise. Turns out, it was the speakers. Then, when I thought it was my laptop messing, it is 8 years old now. Then, one day, I heard the same exact noise coming from my radio, coming right from the speakers. And then today, my desktop speakers started making the same noise. I don't know what the hell is going on, but it's really strange. I've lived here for over 6 months now. If it were something in my environment, wouldn't it have started a while ago, not just the other day? Story 17. My fiance, then girlfriend, is from a small town about 25 miles from where I lived. Her family bought some old property that was built on an old mine and built a one-story, relatively small ranch house. This house is haunted. My fiance has a little sister, much younger than her, who when she was younger saw something. Her mom walked past her room and her sister said, "Mommy, who's that pretty lady?" Fiance's mom thinks her daughter is talking about her, but then the daughter corrects her and says, "No, the pretty blonde lady in the white dress. She just walked right behind you." I just got some serious goosebumps typing that. Another time, my fiance was studying in her room, and her dad comes into her room and just bursts through the door. "Why did you do that?" he asks her. She has no idea what he's talking about. Apparently, when he was vacuuming something, jerked the vacuum out of his hands, and he turned around and no one was there. He assumed it was his daughter who was the only person in the house. It was after this that they did some research on the property and found out about the old mine. I've never felt right in the house when I am there. I've always felt like something was in there with me, especially in the toilet, as weird as that sounds. Now we live in a brand new condo that I bought with no more strange occurrences. Story 18. Sleep. I'm terrified of sleep. I know this doesn't make much sense, but why the actual crap do we sleep? We aren't shutting our bodies off to recharge. We aren't computers or robots or anything, so why do we do it? Science cannot tell me this. Logic cannot tell me this. Religion cannot tell me this. Sleep scares the ever-loving crap out of me. I hear what you are saying. From a very young age, I have had some pretty dark and disturbing dreams. These days, I smoke a joint before bed to put my mind straight into delta frequency, deep, dreamless sleep. Our conscious mind and physical bodies are separate. Our physical representation is just an expression of something far bigger than what you think you are. If that makes sense, =P. Our bodies suffer from fatigue. It needs rest. Our conscious mind does not. We exist physically in the third dimension. But when we dream in higher dimensions, different frequencies. Try meditation and getting to know your higher self. Every now and then I enjoy dreaming, but 9 times out of 10 I realize I am dreaming and wake up. Story 19, the Global Consciousness Project. The fact that these guys are selecting portions of random data blindly, a fact normally ignored by critics. And yet those portions consistently return non-random data. So non-random that the probability of consistent non-random data blindly picked out of random data mess with my mind to no small degree. I mean, even if you reject their justification for picking those time frames in the first place, the fact that the data are picked blindly, that the data is random overall, and yet such an extreme level of non-randomness is found is, well, holy crap. Story 20. There was an enormous unexplained explosion, roughly 1,000 times more powerful than World War II A-bombs, in the Russian skies in 1908, called the Tunguska event. Scientists have long been speculating what caused this explosion that leveled about 2,000 square miles of Russian forest. The theories range from comets and asteroids to UFOs, antimatter, and a black hole passing through Earth. Fun fact, if the event happened 4 minutes later, it would have leveled St. Petersburg and probably killed upwards of 500,000 people.